Hello, my name is Eric Durnell. I'm from the Indiana Child Support Bureau, and I'm here to talk to you today about the digital marketing research project results that we had for the digital marketing grant. Today, I'll talk about the background of what we did. I'll talk about the project goals, the research and planning, the 7 interventions that we attempted, and the results and conclusions, and then give you a little bit about the next steps and additional research. The Indiana Child Support Program has a little bit of an overview. It's administered by the Department of Child Services Child Support Bureau. It's in collaboration with the prosecutors and clerks in the 92 counties in Indiana. Since about 2012, statewide caseloads have declined by more than 120,000 cases. That's been about a 32.5% decrease. In response to some of this decline, CSB has created an outreach unit. And in 2016, we did a little bit of digital marketing in a statewide marketing campaign that was undertaken to celebrate our 40th anniversary of the Child Support Bureau in Indiana. Some of the project goals that Indiana had for the digital marketing grant was we had a hypothesis of our program lacks public awareness. A second hypothesis was that our program terminology negatively impacts participation. And also, our program participation is hindered by a lack of modernized engagement. So the goal was to increase our general awareness about the program, increase the program participation and caseload, and try to increase access to the program through two-way digital communication. Some of the research questions that we thought about as we were doing this is, what is the level of awareness about the child support program among potential participants? So we weren't necessarily looking at people who are already in our program. We were trying to focus on people who are not in our program and why they're not, and do they even know about us? What factors facilitate or hinder potential participants from enrolling in the program? And which digital marketing mediums are successful in reaching these potential participants? Here's a quick timeline. So we started the project back in 2018. We did the planning phase for about 6 months. The second part of that planning phase was our research. And then last year in April, we started our Intervention 1, and then we did Intervention 2, Intervention 3, which was continuing on, and then, of course, in March of 2020, we hit the COVID. And so we delayed our Intervention 4. COVID actually ended up shutting down and canceling our Intervention 6, and Intervention 5 was stopped in the middle. But we were able to get off Intervention 7, which was actually doing digital marketing ads, which was the biggest part of all the different interventions that we were doing. So this is a timeline of what happened. Everything was going smooth, of course, until COVID. But we were still able to get enough work done during COVID that we were able to complete by the end of September when the grant ended. So the first phase that we had was basically our planning and our research. And so our research consisted of 3 phases. In the first phase, we took 100 online surveys and we sent them out, and we were focusing on awareness and perceptions. After we got the results of those, we put together some material to try to have online focus groups and 1 in-person focus groups, and we were able to get about 26 participants that were eligible for child support but weren't in the program to come either in person or online to talk to us about what they knew about the program and what the program could do for them. And then we ended it with taking some of the results from phase 1 and phase 2 and creating another online survey. We sent that out to 300 people. And again, we focused on perceptions, and we were marketing and testing of the creative material. So in phases 1 and 2, we were working on creating our digital marketing ads. And in phase 3, we were actually able to show individuals some of those ads and see what their opinion of those ads were. So the demographics of our research participants, we were mostly working females ages 25 to 54. They distributed across household incomes ranging from under 15,000 to over 100 plus. So we had a wide range of different household incomes. We split them between, there was some rural and some urban and the suburban. So part of our research that we were doing with the digital marketing ads was seeing whether an ad worked differently in a rural, urban, or suburban setting. And so then there were various levels of education and relationship statuses between people that were single, people that were remarried, and whatnot. So the survey responses we had 400 total respondents of the surveys. If you remember, in the research phase 1, we did 100 surveys, and in the phase 3, we did 300 surveys. And out of them, we reached our target market of about 398 of them were eligible for child support, but they were not in the child support program. So that was 99.5%. From a marketing perspective, 324 of them indicated that they had a need for child support, but only 256 of them were even aware of the child support program in Indiana. 147 were interested in the program, and 75 indicated that they had had a prior attempt to enroll in the Indiana child support program. The conversion, we had 64 indicated successfully enrolling in the program at one point or another, but we don't believe that they were still in it. And then the retention, 11 of them indicated having an active case or a case that reached emancipation age. So there were some people who were aware of it, but they weren't quite in the program when we were giving them this survey. So here are some of the responses that we had. 325 of the respondents said that they had a hesitant about enrolling. So we didn't ask any follow-up questions to these surveys. So it was just, on a scale of 1 to 7, are you hesitant about enrolling in the program? And we had 325% of them, or 325 respondents say yes. 15 of the respondents said they had difficulty with the enrollment process. So those that did know about our program and had attempted, 15 of them said that they had difficulty, and 53 respondents said they actually had an issue with the way that the program is or the way that the program was run. And so from there, we moved on to see what were the top deterrents to enrollment. Again, awareness of the program was the top one, but we also found out that a lot of people said that there was either not needed or they had a private agreement that was in place, which basically meant that they didn't need the child support program as it's run here in Indiana. So this helped us, these survey responses, all the research that we did, it helped us solidify what we wanted to do with the 7 different interventions that we had. The first one that we wanted to do was, the focus group analysis of this was that we had difficulty with the program or enrollment in the program. There was a lack of program awareness, and that there's no need for the program, financially self-sufficient blended families. So we really didn't focus on the individuals that said there was no need for the program. We were focusing more on either the difficulty within the program or the enrollment in the program or the lack of the program awareness. So with the difficulty in enrollment in the program, we were wondering why would somebody who was looking for child support be deterred from actually getting into the program? And one of the things that we honed in on was the word apply. So in our interventions 1 and 2, what we did was we did a series of experiments. At the bottom of this page, you'll see we evaluated our hypothesis that the program terminology negatively impacts participation. This contributed to our goal of increasing program participation and caseload through improved terminology. Our experiment type was we used a pre-post non-experimental design approach on this. So we basically looked at all the responses and the click-through rates before we made the word changes and then what we did after we made the changes. So it really wasn't a very highly scientific experiment, so it's really non-experimental design, but it gave us a pre and post look at what the word changes did. And what we ended up doing was we used alternative words to the word apply. We used enroll now, we used getting started, we used register, we used sign me up, and we used open a case. And what we were doing for that is we're trying to see is could the wording that we use within our website on trying to get people to get into our program, could that be deterring people from actually clicking on and downloading, at this point in time, an application that we had? And so if you look at this graph, it shows every term that we used, enroll, open a case, sign me up, register, and getting started, all had better results than us using the word apply. And so we started thinking about that, and we were trying to figure out why would that happen. And so our conclusions on this was that we feel that apply and an application suggest the possibility of rejection. So if somebody is applying or they're filling out an application outside of child support, they're usually filling out an application that they know that they can be rejected for. You fill out an application for a car loan. You fill out an application for a mortgage. You fill out an application to get into a college. Each one of those means that they can actually be rejected for the car loan or the mortgage, or they can be rejected to the college that they want to go to. Whereas within Indiana and the child support program, you're really not applying to get into the program. In fact, you're just enrolling. So we feel that using the positive alternative words can lead to a greater enrollment in child support, into the child support program. So sign up, enroll, more information, those types of words. And what we've actually done here in Indiana is we moved the word apply on our website. We do not have people apply now. We have them enroll, and we've actually changed our application to say enrollment form. And now we use the word enroll and we use the word enrollment form when we're talking about application. It's very difficult to get out of your vernacular, though. So as I go through this, I might reference an application, and what I'm really referencing is an enrollment form. But it's been so ingrained in child support for the last 40-some years that you have an application, that that's the way we always refer to it. But we're learning that that word in itself might be deterring people from clicking on it because they think that if I apply, I might get rejected. Intervention 3, we tested some different words now. So one of the things that, like we were saying, is we felt like this program terminology negatively impacts participation. So that's the hypothesis that we were looking at in both Interventions 3 and 4. This is contributing to our goal of increasing the program participation, but in Interventions 3 and 4, we used a random control trial approach, so an RCT. And so what this did is this had basically a base page that you hit, and then we had 3 or 4 alternate pages. And so when somebody came into our website, they were shown one of these 4 or 5 different pages. And they were randomly put into each one of these groups. So we had the first one was the control group, and then we had the 3, or I think the 4 or 5 different variants. So I think 4 in Interventions 3 and 5 in Intervention 4. We had different variants of that page. And what we did is we compared the number of people who went to the page and got the control group and how many clicked on our enrollment form versus the ones that went to each one of the variants. The variants were, well, the control group was sign up for services. Variant 1 was sign up for child support services. Variant 2 was sign up for 4D services. The third one was sign up for DCS services, and then the last one was sign up for prosecutor services. The reason here in Indiana we use DCS is because the Child Support Bureau, which oversees the child support program in the state of Indiana, is under the umbrella of the Department of Child Services. So that is that's the agency that oversees the child support, and which is used in a lot of our child support on our pages because everyone has to go to the DCS page to get into the child support. So we were seeing whether DCS negatively impact or even prosecutor. And the reason we use prosecutor is because in Indiana, even though the state has the Child Support Bureau that oversees the child support program, it's actually enforced and run by the prosecutors in all 92 of those county offices. And so we had the control group and these 4 variants, and we were seeing which one did better. And so what we had happen is the control group, just saying sign up for services, had 585 people had come in and clicked on the enrollment form that came into that control group. Child support, so sign up for child support services, actually had 591. So it did a slightly better than the control group, but not significantly better. But the other 3 variants that we had, 4D, DCS, and prosecutor, the only thing that was different on this page was that term. And so that's how we did the random control trial, is that we just changed the one term. And as you can see, the downloads of our enrollment forms decreased when we used 4D services, DCS services, and prosecutor services. So our conclusions is that agency terminology such as 4D negatively impacts enrollments, and we believe that these terms are confusing to potential participants. DCS and prosecutor also had the worst performance, whereas the child support performed equivalent to the control. So we believe that marketing materials should be updated to replace or de-emphasize state agency references and technical terms. So just saying sign up for child support services might be the best way to go. But that conclusion we couldn't really live with, because we were like, well, what about if we put these agency terms in front of child support services? So what if it was just that people went in there and they said, oh, it said child support services, so that's what I'm going to sign up for because I don't know what these other services are. And so our intervention 4 was to build upon what we did with intervention 3. So we know that the best terminology right now is to sign up for child support services. So again, we're hitting the hypothesis of the program terminology is contributing to our goal of increasing in participation. We use the same RCT, but our control now was sign up for child support services, and our variants were sign up for 4D child support services, sign up for DCS child support services, sign up for prosecutor child support services, and then in this intervention, we actually threw in the additional term of CSB, because that is us, the Child Support Bureau. And so what we thought was that we've been running the child support program for the last 40-some years. Of course, our agency is not going to be a deterrent. We figured the other agencies might be a deterrent. And as I was saying, here in Indiana, we're part of the Department of Child Services. Well, the Department of Child Services has, Child Protective Services, child welfare. So sometimes there's a negative connotation to DCS because of the work that they have to do. Same thing with the prosecutors. In the counties, the prosecutors have a criminal side, and then they have the child support side. And so when a lot of people think about prosecutors, they think about more on the criminal side of it, so it's more of a negative. But we were thinking that Child Support Bureau, we should probably do a little bit better. Well, the results were that CSB did do okay, but no. It didn't do it did better than the other terms, but it did not do any better than just what our control group said, which was sign up for child support services. So adding CSB, we had, again, over 100 less downloads of the enrollment form. 4D, DCS, and prosecutor all did a lot worse than just saying sign up for child support services. So our conclusion with this is that agency terminology such as 4D negatively impacts enrollment, and we believe that these terms are confusing to potential participants even when coupled with child support. Any state agency reference, CSB, DCS, and prosecutor. So our hypothesis was that, we probably didn't, but in fact we did. Putting our state agency in front of child support actually decreased people from clicking on the enrollment form. So we believe that this creates some hesitation about the enrollment process for possibly 1 out of every 10 potential participants. Again, the final conclusion on this is that marketing materials should be updated to replace or de-emphasize state agency references and technical terms. So just referring to the program as the child support program seems to connect with more people than us trying to add technical term like 4D or even state agencies like CSB or DCS. So after we checked out terminology and we had those we thought were really awesome conclusions about the word apply and changed it to enroll, and after we had we learned that the technical and agency terminology might deter people, we focused next on what we can do to get people to interact with our agency a little bit different. So we are exploring the viability of what we call the two-way digital communication. And so this contributed to our goal of increasing access to the program awareness through what we call two-way digital communication. We tried using a random control trial on this one too, so I'll walk through it a little bit more. We sent out postcards. We used a Google Voice number monitored by the outreach team to test this texting feature. And what we ended up doing was we sent out postcard where we targeted 4,642 existing non-4D cases that were randomly split into 2 groups of 2,321. The control group was not informed about the texting, and the variant group was informed about the texting. And what we did was we looked at non-4D cases that were, of course, open. They were receiving some sort of a payment, but not 100% of their payments. They had a child under the age of 15, and we thought that they were a good group that we could target. As you see in here, we had to stop it due to COVID-19. We started this intervention on March 1st, and we ended up having to stop it. But here's an example of the postcard that we did. On the left here, it says, "Want help with child support," was on the front of it. On the back of it was, "If you are not receiving all of your court-ordered child support, we may help. Here's our texting number. Don't text that. It's not working anymore." And then we talked a little bit about our program, and then we sent that out to these non-4D participants. Like I said, as we had to stop it, we started on March 1st. March 13th or 14th, the state went into lockdown. Everybody went home, and so we couldn't really continue this intervention and basically trust the results that we get from it because COVID-19 would have changed the dynamics of the whole experiment. But in those couple weeks that we did before COVID hit, we ended up getting 160 texts from the 2,300 postcards that we sent out. And in fact, we did track how many of those non-4D cases converted from non-4D to 4D. And the ones that got the control postcard, which had no texting on it, we had 50 people convert from non-4D to 4D. And then with the texting number, we had actually 63 people. So our conclusions for this is that we really felt like with the quick response that we got from people after receiving this postcard and the texting back, that texting is a desired two-way communication channel that can increase program participation and the public awareness. And we should explore that a little bit further as a modern way of engaging. With no outreach beyond a scripted text response and a link to our website, that's what we texted everybody back when they texted child support to us, we had a 26% greater conversion than the control group. We believe that would have been a lot higher with more of an active outreach and communication, but we ended up getting 26% more, which is pretty good. So we really feel that texting is a potential communication channel for both outreach and increased program participation, and also customer service to support existing participants. So even though we had to cancel this, we really feel that texting is something that should be explored further and possibly be implemented. The next thing that we wanted to do to explore the two-way digital communications was look at chat. And so what we did with Intervention 6 is we're setting up a chat bot. So the chat is a two-way kind of instant message between people on our website. We did not want to have a human on our end answering the chats as they were coming in, so what we were doing is creating a chat bot as a viable two-way. We were going to use a random control trial approach for this. We had a company called CIT First, which they used OutSystems low-code platform and a Microsoft bot framework. And it was a chat bot that was scripted with conversational responses to collect contact information so then we can contact them back. So what we're basically using the chat bot was to say, hey, how do you want us to contact you? Email, phone call, do you want us to text you or something like that? So we wanted to get some sort of first interaction with them through this chat bot, and then we were going to follow up with them. This one was the one that got canceled altogether because of COVID. COVID led to a state IT policy changes that restricted our ability to deploy the chatbot on our website. So prior to COVID, we were setting up where we could deploy this chatbot on our childsupport.in.gov website. Because of COVID and everybody working remotely, our IT department locked down a whole bunch of stuff, and we really weren't able to deploy it. And by the time we were working everything out, there was insufficient time in the grant to get the new required approvals and move forward with deploying the chatbot. So we ended up having to cancel that intervention. But we really believe that if anybody's out there that can do it, is that the research that we did and the responses that we got from texting, that the chat would be a really good way of communicating. Our last intervention, Intervention 7, was the largest. This is where we were actually taking those ads that we got from our research and we looked at, and we had the 300 survey respondents look at, and we were deploying those out on the internet and out into the smartphones. And so we tested a variety of digital ads with varying components to determine the best way to digitally market the child support program, and if audience preferences vary across geographical areas. So an urban, suburban, or rural setting, do the ads have to be different for the different type of people we were trying to communicate with, depending on what geographical area that they live in? So this intervention was really evaluating all three hypotheses that there is: a lack of public awareness, that the agency terminology negatively impacts participation, and that the program participation is hindered by a lack of modernized engagement. So it contributed to both our goal of increasing public awareness and program participation. We used an RCT approach for this also, and we used a product called Centro Basis DSP, which is the demand-side platform. Centro is the company, Basis is their product. We were designing and executing a digital marketing campaign that placed digital ads across all digital exchanges on the desktop and mobile devices. So your digital exchanges were your Googles and others that were able to take that ad and place it on different websites. We targeted a population of over 450,000 individuals in our 5 Indiana counties that were part of the digital marketing campaign. So we looked at 56 different zip codes. We looked at some counties that were considered rural counties, and we had a county that was an urban, suburban type setting. And the geographical area with additional targeting narrowing down to the delivery of parents between the ages of 19 and 54. So the way that DSP, the Basis DSP worked is that we said we're looking for parents 19 to 54 that are in these zip codes, and what Centro Basis did was then take that information, throw it out into these exchanges. These exchanges then had auctions, and we were bidding on the auctions. And if we won that auction, then that exchange would say, okay, here are the websites that we know of where these individuals, parents between 19 and 54 in these zip codes go to, and they would place our ad either on the desktop or on mobile devices. So here are some examples of the digital ad. We had 31 of these display ads. We had 4 different sizes. We needed the different sizes so that we could optimize on the desktop and mobile. Some sizes worked on desktop. They didn't work on mobile, and vice versa. If you look at the different components that we had for these ads, is you have an image here, which you see, I think, 4 different images we have here. There was a tagline. There's a message. There's the agency reference. So the this cutout here in the circular, this is the basically the image that we have for DCS and for CSB. And then we have this bottom thing called a call to action. So each one of these different ads had either a different image, a different logo, a different message. And so one of the logos we had was your child support partner. We had a message of helping you get the support your kids need. Money can't buy love, it can buy support. We had pictures with kids, we had pictures without kids, we had pictures of money. And the reason we had pictures of money is during our research, our market research, some of the people in the focus group said child support's about money. If we saw money on there, that might make us want to click on an ad. And so here's some examples of it. And here's some of the results. So the 5 random control trials, 1 for each aspect of the digital ads. We had 5 of these RCTs running, and each one of them had a control group that, like, for example, didn't have an image, and then we had 4 or 5 different ads that had different images on it. The same thing, there's the control group did not have a tagline, but the other ads that were in the RCT did have a different tagline. We ended up spending $117,000 on this, and we had over 24 million impressions. Those 24 million impressions generated over 25,000 clicks of our digital ads, and from there, the secondary response of actually clicking on our enrollment form, we had 5,391 of those. So Indiana's enrollment process is manual right now, but an online enrollment process is being developed. Just to give you an understanding of how many 5,391, so this intervention ran for 62 days, so roughly 2 months. On a given month, pretty much prior to COVID, we would get about 1,500 to 2,000 downloads of our enrollment form from the entire state of people just going to our our childsupport.in.gov website. So within 2 months of these 5 counties, so we're talking about 7% of the population of Indiana, we had 5,391 downloads of our enrollment form. So that was a much, much bigger amount of downloads that we got from these counties that were running these digital ads than the ones that did not have digital ads. And if you really want to think about what our cost of conversion is, and again, we do not know how many of these enrollment forms that were downloaded actually converted into cases because it's a manual process. They have to download the enrollment form and then they have to go into the county offices basically to sign up for services. But from the amount of money that we spent to the amount of downloads that we received, we spent about $21.70 for every one of these downloads that we got. So some more about the results. Statistical significance was only achieved in the random control trial for the tagline component. So what that means is that of all the different components of that ad, the image, the tagline, the message, we had the call to action and the agency reference, the tagline was the one that showed, the only one that showed statistical significance, meaning that the different tagline actually had the biggest impact on whether people clicked on an ad or not. Our tagline variance, comfort, showed a 13.59% deviation above the control. So the one that you saw earlier that said money can't buy love, but it can supply comfort, that one did almost 14% above what the control group was, and a greater than 10% deviation compared to all the other variants, ranking as the top variant even in different geographical areas. So the one with comfort in it actually appealed to urban, suburban, and the rural setting. The 5 participating counties also saw a combined 9.7% increase in year-over-year new 4D enrollments for the 2 months of the intervention, while the rest of the state saw a combined decrease of negative 26.59%. So what we did is we compared the number of enrollments from June and July of 2019 to June and July of 2020, and the counties that participated in our digital marketing saw almost a 10% increase in the number of cases that they had from 2019 to 2020, or from 2020 from when they had in 2019, whereas the rest of the state saw almost a 27% decrease. Allen County, which represents our large urban suburban area, had a 9.8% increase in their year-over-year new 4D enrollment. So our large county, comparing it to our other large counties that we have here in Indiana, they saw a 9.8% increase. The rest of our large counties actually saw a 40% decrease. So, conclusions. We think tagline in our experiment seems to be the only component of a digital ad that mattered. So it didn't matter what image that we used, what message that we put in there. It didn't matter what our call to action was or our agency. The only part of that digital ad in our experiment that really kind of moved the needle was the tagline. And so if you remember, it's the tagline that had comfort in it. So there is a historical precedence for this kind of campaign. Is think about all the major brands out there that have a tagline. Nike has Just Do It. California Milk Processing Board has Got Milk. Wendy's, back in the day, they had the Where's the Beef, and there's many more. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is seeing, can we take a tagline with comfort and do something with it, because it seems like the word comfort, again, in our experiment, resonated best with audience. And we think the ads that are out there should be developed to associate child support with this emotion. The increases in new 4D enrollments for the 5 participating counties shows the impact of digital marketing, especially when we consider that they had an increase in the number of new cases during the global pandemic, and it caused a decrease for all the non-participating counties across the state and the state as a whole. And then, of course, we think that sustained annual digital marketing could be a highly effective strategy for curbing some of the overall declines in the child support program. It was a great way to get our message out to people. People got to see it. We didn't have to have our outreach team go out and try to do presentations or be part of community events. It was right there on their computers or on their phones. And so it was a good way to get our message out. People were clicking through it. They were getting to our page. And then we had quite a few people that were actually downloading our new enrollment form. So that was the conclusion of the 7 different interventions that we had. Some of the other things that Indiana was looking into as to what we could do if we had more time or if the digital marketing grant was to continue even further was we were going to look into different words. We caught onto the word apply and application early on, and so we did the research on that and really feel like changing that word to enroll actually changed the attitude that people had coming into the site. The other one that we wanted to look at and that we're recommending that people can, look at if they can is we noticed that we were using the word need a lot. And so in some of our outreach material and some of our other campaigns that we had was, do you need help with your child support, you know? And what we found out talking to the different focus groups is the need's kind of a trigger word because people are like, the way they read that is you need the government to come in and help you out with your life. And so a lot of people are like, no, I don't need you to come in and do that. The word need means something to them, and they feel like if they say that they need someone, then that means that it's because they're not capable of doing it themselves. And so the word that we think what would resonate better with people in engagement with the child support program is the word want. Because it's not that people need us to, you know, necessarily do anything for them. Sometimes they want us to help them out, and they want us to help them navigate through the child support journey, navigate through our different legal things that we have, navigate through our program, but they want us to basically help them out. So looking into the word need versus the word want was something that we think that we might try doing on our own. Don't know how much we'll be able to get into that, but that's something that we want to look at. The other thing that we wanted to do is based on our results of texting in Intervention 5, we would like to do a larger pilot of texting for both outreach and for our customer service. So we can reach out to the people, try getting getting people to get into our program, but we also thought that our customer service, our call center that we currently have, might benefit from having some sort of a texting feature too. So that's something that we want to either try to implement or at least look into doing that. We believe that texting is that hybrid between an email and a phone call. It creates a response medium focused on brevity and speed, but not requiring the immediate pressure of a phone call or allowing for the more detailed, polished response and a more relaxed interaction. So we really feel like texting is something that if you haven't already started doing that, it's something you should really look into, and that we're going to try pushing forward and seeing what we can do here in Indiana. And then the last thing that we think you could do for additional research is that when we were doing our research and we had our focus groups in, we had a lot of people that were talking to us about the program, and they didn't really know anything about the program. As I came back and I was telling the rest of my team and the rest of child support about that, I realized that there were people that were in the child support program that don't necessarily use our services. And they don't use our services for one reason or another. But we have a couple hundred people in child support, and in DCS in general, we have about 4,000 or 5,000 people. So one of the things that we thought about is surveying our own agency employees and ask them about the likeliness of them using the child support program and finding out from them if they say that they wouldn't use our program, why? So most of you, or anyone listening to this, if you're in a state agency, then you have a group of people that you work with, or your agency as a whole or bigger, where you could possibly put out a survey. And so we're going to probably work on trying to get a survey that we can do through DCS to see what people that are at the state who should know about our program, what they really know about our program, and if any insight that we can glean from them that could help us better communicate our program to the public. One of the last things I have here too is we tried to perform machine learning on some of the information that we received through the surveys and through our focus group. So we're talking about a small group of people here, so anywhere between the 400 to about 425 or so pieces of information that we got about demographics, about gender, working status, what kind of county classification they have, whether they're urban, rural, or suburban, age group, economics class. And what we did is we pushed it through machine learning. So again, we did not have a very big audience, a very big data set here to work with. And we tried to predict the probability of conversion. And so if you look here at the very top, female, male, working, urban, rural, poverty class, middle class, 100% probability of converting if we can get our message out to them and convince them that the program is something that would be beneficial to them. But as you look down towards the bottom, and I mean it was I think 80%, 81%, we started looking at female, working, urban, suburban, poverty, and middle class. And if you really look at the bottom, 3 out of the last 5 are male. So 87% on down. There's a lot of male working rural, male not working rural, poverty class for a lot of the males. They were hesitant on getting into our program, and this machine learning showed us that. And so, this shows us that we have the hardest time trying to convert somebody in that demographic, but why? And again, we'd love to get more information about this, and we might try doing that if we have the capability to do that, is to get more surveys out there to get this so we can kind of build upon this machine learning. But it's showing us that, males in the poverty class, whether it's rural or suburban, whether they're working or not working, that they are least likely to convert into our program. And this gives us a little bit of information as to who we should start targeting and then try finding out why would they be less likely to convert. So using machine learning was something that we dabbled with. We didn't do a lot. We didn't have a lot of data in the data set, but this is something that we did want to show. So if you have any questions about what you saw today or what I went over, please feel free to contact me. My name again is Eric Durnell. I can be reached at eric.durnell@dcs.in.gov. Thank you very much.